Now that we've looked at different kinds of motherboards, different kinds of cases, we need to take a look at some of the settings that we have for a particular motherboard. Every motherboard has something called the BIOS, or the Basic Input-Output System, and it's contained within what's called CMOS, which keeps all the settings intact every time you shut off your computer. Now, if you're talking about memory settings that don't disappear when power is not applied to them, we're talking non-volatile memory. When we're talking about regular memory, let's say like RAM, which we discuss in the next module, when you turn your computer off, boom, it's gone. That's called volatile memory. Now, the CMOS settings, or the setup, or the BIOS setup, is there so if we change different components on our computer, it can keep track of it. Because every time you turn a computer off, it pretty much forgets who it is and has to be told everything when it boots back up. So, to get into the CMOS settings, you either hit delete or F2 or F8, depending upon the individual manufacturer of your CMOS settings. Let's take a look here at some typical CMOS settings, and let me guide you through those so you can understand how to set up your computer and what the BIOS settings are. We can take a look at this one here, and this is Phoenix BIOS setup, and you can see they have the copyright on top, and we begin with the system time. And the system time, of course, is going to be what date it is and what particular time it is during the week. What language do you want to use for these BIOS settings? In this case, it's English, which is probably a good thing because we speak English. Disk A, 1.44 floppy and a 3.5 inch. And if you had a 5 1/4 inch floppy, then you would put that setting in there. The IDE adapter. The IDE adapter is going to basically be auto or automatic setup for that. It used to be in the day you would have to go in here and say what kind of adapter it has or what kind of hard drive it has. Now, setting that to auto is the best way to go. The video system, EGA or VGA, which is pretty much standard right there. And you can see down here, system memory, in this case it's 640 kilobytes, and extended memory is 23 megabytes. We're going to talk a little bit about system memory, conventional memory, extended memory as we go along. Now, taking a look at some other settings here, and that is for our hard drive itself. You can see here that this particular setup that we have on the screenshot is a user-defined 1 gigabyte hard drive. And usually this would not be user-defined. You would go ahead and set that to auto, which is the correct way of doing it, and let the hard drive do the work. Why do that work if you don't have to? And it has what kind of sectors? LBA mode, which we talk about in a while here, how it transfers, and if it has read ahead or write ahead enabled on top of it. Moving to the next slide, which is the advanced slide, and the first question it asks is this a plug-and-play operating system? Now, please know that in order to have plug-and-play, you have to have 3 different things. And that is a plug-and-play BIOS, which this one obviously is because we have that setting in there, a plug-and-play operating system, and a plug-and-play peripheral card. Those 3 things are necessary for plug-and-play to work. Moving ahead, we have the large disk access. And large disk access is anything above 2 gigabytes. Anything below 2 gigabytes, if your BIOS doesn't handle it, guess what? The largest hard drive you can have on that particular computer, if you don't have large disk access, would be 2 gigabytes, which is not very big by today's standards. Moving on to the security tab for this particular BIOS setup. You have supervisor password. Now let me give you a warning about the supervisor password. Not a good idea. It is only a good idea if you really have people on your floor or end users that you're supporting that know to get into BIOS and could mess things up. The reason I advise against this is because somebody's going to forget that password, and you have to do this whole password reset routine in order to erase that password. And if anybody knew what they were doing as far as the BIOS setup goes, they know how to delete that password if they know how to get in there, basically. The custom sign-on banner, that is pretty much to your preference, pretty much not important right there, and what kind of access that you have to the different diskettes that you have on your computer. Now, moving forward to the Power tab. On the Power tab, most of this power management should be enabled at the BIOS setting so that the operating system can, one, shut down the monitor if it's not being used very much, because especially the old CRT monitors just suck the power out of the wall. So if you wanted to lessen the power, be more green as it were, you would want to enable your power management at the BIOS level here. Moving ahead, you can see that the different BIOS settings are going to be different depending upon who you buy your motherboard from and what manufacturer of BIOS the motherboard manufacturer purchased their BIOS from. Everyone is going to be a little bit different. The more modern settings for BIOS, which we'll show you once we put this computer together, is a little more advanced. You have a little more settings inside of there, including the soft setup of what kind of chip you have, what your bus speed is, and all those different kind of modern things that are in the BIOS. Just keep in mind, in order to get into BIOS, you either push delete or F1 or F2, sometimes F8, in order to get into those screens that you use to set up your computer. Every computer is going to be a little bit different. Every motherboard is going to have different things attached to it. So you have to occasionally go in there, change the BIOS settings in order to, let's say, change your hard drive. Or if you add some different kind of RAM, or you change your bus speed, or you upgrade your CPU, you might have to go in there to BIOS to make those kinds of changes. So keep in mind, BIOS setup is mostly there for any kind of changes you made to attachments that attach to the motherboard itself. And that's a look at BIOS.